Hello everybody, it's the Game Judge here, and with Obsidian Entertainment's Avowed just months away from release, with it coming out in February of this year, the anticipation for Avowed is really starting to heat up. Let me start off by saying that there is a lot of things that I think look great when it comes to Avowed, based off the things we've seen so far, but that's a whole other video. And with the direction that a lot of these modern games are going with these days, such as the recently released controversial Dragon Age the Veilguard, it has really caused me to take a step back and begin to look at Obsidian's Avowed in an optimistic but cautious way. There are a couple things in regards to Avowed that I want to talk about that made me feel this way. Obsidian announced back in 2023 that Obsidian at first wanted Avowed to be Obsidian's Skyrim, but decided to essentially change the direction of Avowed into a more linear RPG experience. This was according to PC Gamer back in 2023, and it reads, "That was the plan, at least at first. Originally we were pitching in essence our Skyrim," confirms Obsidian CEO. "The feeling then was that Obsidian were better served not following Bethesda's example of a grand open world, but instead staying true to what Obsidian games should be." That's when we backed up and said again, what are we good at? What's our lane? That is Obsidian's dedication to storytelling. We could go off and create a gigantic open world and then deal with all the consequences of that, because that makes it a different style game. But we want to tell more confined stories that the player can experience with their companions. Now, depending on how you slice it, this might serve as a disappointment to a lot of people, because Obsidian has kind of always been thought of as a big challenger to Bethesda when it comes to big open world fantasy RPG games, and perhaps what really cemented this comparison is when Obsidian developed Fallout New Vegas and Bethesda Game Studios developed Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 many years ago. However, I do feel overall this is a good direction for Avowed to go in, because while Obsidian games are somewhat open world, to me they've never been more open than Bethesda's in my opinion, and I've personally always kind of liked Obsidian as a more linear version of Bethesda games with better writing and storytelling, but perhaps not as strong in the open world exploration part. For that, I would go play a Bethesda game. A good example of this is The Outer Worlds, a game that I loved, which Obsidian Entertainment released in 2019 on a smaller budget. The Outer Worlds is open, but more condensed, linear, and focused on loads of dialogue and character and companion development. Regardless, this is concerning in the sense that how linear does this exactly mean that Avowed's going to be? And if we kind of look at this as a scale, we have linear on one side, we have open world on the other. Where is Avowed going to fall on this spectrum? Are they going to put all their eggs in one basket and swing too much to the linear side of the scale? And while we do have some limited footage of Avowed, and it does appear to be a fairly open world, we can only really tell once we get our hands fully on the game. And if this is the direction they're going in, it is a delicate balance that they must figure out between linear and open world. This is a big area of concern for me, because if we go back in time and look at the original Avowed trailers and compare them with the Avowed trailers of today, then we could see an obvious shift in the art direction from a more gritty, dark art to a more colorful, vibrant art. Biowares did the same thing with Dragon Age the Veilguard compared to the predecessors, and Blizzard did the same thing with Diablo 3 when compared to Diablo 1 and 2. I'm well aware that some people may like this art style and that art is subjective. With that being said, I'm not a big fan of this particular art style when playing these types of RPG video games. I prefer them to be more mature, serious in tone, and not shying away from showing me the gritty, dark sides of a world. This makes me feel more immersed in a world of realism that demands me to take it seriously. It's going to be interesting to see how this vibrant art style in Avowed is going to affect immersion. The good news is we did see a little bit of blood in the Avowed footage that we've been given, so maybe, just maybe, there's hope. Now, admittedly, there's many good things that we've seen in Avowed when it comes to combat. Things like dual wielding, weapon variety, spell variety, a multitude of skills, flashy combat, and varied combat actions like parry and power attacks. But all of this is great. One thing I've noticed that concerns me somewhat is the combat seems a little bit stiff looking at times. This is an area that I feel is kind of hard to explain. The best way I can describe this is that the creatures and companions in the world feel somewhat static, like the animations aren't fluid or flexible when you're attacking or talking to them. Hopefully this gets the message across, and to Obsidian's credit, when they showed us footage of Avowed a while ago, people complained about the weapon impact not being really impactful, and they did go back and prove that element in the later footage they showed us. This at least shows that Obsidian is somewhat receptive to fan feedback, but you have to wonder, how will the good things we've seen from Avowed's combat mesh with the potentially stiff combat? Maybe the other elements will be so good that the stiff combat is forgiven. Or maybe once we play the game and get a feel for the combat, things could change. Overall though, I love what I'm seeing from Obsidian Entertainment's Avowed, and I'm excited to get my hands on the game, but I'm also being cautious because I've been let down too many times by my favorite game developers recently. Starfield, Veilguard. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How are you guys feeling about Avowed? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you all on the next one.